When I first started with Experity 10 short months ago, I had no idea the team that I was joining. I am so excited for you to get a little peek behind the curtain of these great innovators that work every single day, doing what they can to make the urgent care space that much better. So join me today on DX the podcast as we hear from the great innovators at Experity. Dr. Ron Boucher is the Chief Medical Officer of Teleradiology at Experity, an adjunct professor at OHSU, and fellow of the American College of Radiology. A former career U.S. Navy officer, wartime radiologist in Afghanistan, and leader in the Veteran Health Administration, Ron specializes in musculoskeletal imaging and is driving innovation in AI, telemedicine, and high acuity imaging. Welcome to DX the podcast, Ron.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so excited to be here. We're right here in the AI house. We're immersed in some of today's most exciting technological advances. But with over 3 decades in the field, you have seen how digital transformation really does kind of repeat itself in a way. But this moment maybe feels kind of similar or familiar in some ways to what you've seen. So start us off with painting a picture of what did radiology look like, say, 20, 30 years ago versus what is it looking like today?
Wow, you're bringing me back to that path of 30 years ago. It's very nostalgic. Yeah. It's hard to describe, though, because I tell you, when we first started as radiologists, one of my first career field, we were very manual. Yeah. We took cut film, imaged the patient, actually had to go to a dark room, develop the images. Then we had a light box, and then we had to manually put the films on the light box. And then we used grease pencils. Every radiologist had a grease pencil. You put it in the ear or your pocket, and then you would annotate the findings. Now, what made it more complicated in healthcare is that you only had a single episode for the patient. So if you had to talk to a clinician, they either had to come down and look at the images with you, or you had to take that image and check it out in the library, go there. And then if they had to go to a hospital, it could take days to get it. So you can see how complicated it is. Now let's reel forward 10 years. The digital age came. Man, that was like a fundamental change in our entire workflow. Radiology is very early adopters of technology because just by nature of our business.
Oh, yeah. The forefront of all the AI in healthcare thus far, really.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when digital and the digital age came, man, PACS systems were deployed. Radiology was now film-based and on the computer. When that happened, it transformed the entire workflow because now we have immediate access to films. We can actually manipulate the films where we can window and level. We can have, zoom in, zoom out, and then you can instantly talk to one of your colleagues or referring provider. What was important about that is now filmless, but now it's better care and much faster care and available. But that gave the birth of teleradiology. At that era, now radiologists can dictate from anywhere and gave a global presence and bringing specialty care anywhere around the world. That was a fundamental change. Right. Okay, now let's advance one more decade. Yeah. Okay, now the current century, the biggest revolution right now is, of course, AI. And when you brought AI in, particularly when we're talking about machine learning, deep learning, this is a major disruptor. If I had to say, it was probably the biggest disruptor in technology since the invention of X-rays. And the reason I say that, it's revolutionized everything that we do. AI can now detect subtle pneumonias or subtle fractures, small preliminary nodules. It can identify strokes early. And as a matter of fact, it can even identify early findings that are acute so that it can triage it, and the radiologist can actually take that and read it first. And so now better patient care, so.
And think about physically moving films from one place to another versus the instantaneous recommendation. Look here now, look at this. Wow.
Exactly. And so I show with my colleagues, like AI is sort of like a second pair of highly trained eyes that never gets tired.
Right.
So
fatigue is a real thing for humans. We are human.
Right.
And when you think about all of those processes over and over and over again, there's that opportunity for things to not go the way you expected. So.
And despite that, let's say the last 30 years, despite that, the technology changes, our mission never has changed. You're still delivering high quality care as fast as you can, but now we're doing it smarter, faster, and more connected.
Yeah, which is incredible when you think about the great need that's out there for radiology, the supply and demand issues, and just in general, like do we have enough radiologists to take care of all the work that's out there? This, enter AI and the opportunity to come alongside
For sure.
and escalate and elevate the work that's being done. So very, very cool. I love that walk down memory lane. Thank you for
Yes.
doing that.
Thank
It's
you.
super
It's exciting.
fascinating. You mentioned, though, that AI has this opportunity to take kind of some of that extra cognitive load or burden off radiologists, flagging those abnormalities in real time. This is kind of, though, shaping a whole new generation of healthcare professionals, right? So
Yeah.
the training that's happening in this day and age, how do we keep our physicians, our providers thinking and learning critically? Like, how do we get away from the risk of kind of leaning into technology more than we should? And how do we keep that critical thinking at the forefront of what we're doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In my military experience, I learned one thing really fast, that idle minds are the devil.
Yeah.
And so in healthcare and military, complacency is the enemy.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you have to have a mindset of vigilance, and you're constantly interrogating, but you have to create a continuous learning and curiosity
Mm.
environment. And that way the radiologist is always questioning things. AI is really good at automating things quickly, but
Sure.
we can't take their output blindly
Right.
and say this is what it is. What you have to do is you have to evaluate it, make sure you understand it, and then you apply it. And once you combine that with the clinical picture, then you can use that as an opportunity to learn, and then you change and refine your judgments, and
Right.
you do that continuously, and so you get better at it. You know,
So it's
um,
a collaboration.
yeah,
It's not an all or
it's
nothing.
a total
Yeah.
collaboration, and like even in my military experience, like I was trained to assess things rapidly and make decisions under intense stress but one of the most important things I learned is trust your teammates,
Mm,
right? And I see AI as a teammate.
yeah.
So, but the reality is you have to understand what its limitations are and what its strengths are. And when it puts that output, you have to identify what you can use to use that and make your decisions rapidly and develop confidence. And
Right.
it becomes your team member.
Yeah. So that confidence boosting as well as kind of coming alongside as your teammate. No different than a teammate who's a human. You're not gonna rely and put all the work on them. You're
Correct.
gonna collaborate together to figure out the best possible, journey pathway for this patient and what they need and what the diagnosis is, et cetera.
I
So,
love that. Yeah, I always share that, AI is not going to replace radiologists, because what it does is it amplifies what we can do. And I love what you're saying is like it's more of a collaboration, not a competition, which a
yeah.
lot of people are afraid of. But I
Yes.
tell them that if you don't embrace AI, you're going to become obsolete. So you have to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we recognize that AI can give that kind of confidence in diagnosis, and then combining that with the human judgment as well as, bringing those AI backed recommendations to the table. All of this is probably just overall changing the industry landscape. So, as we look at AI and what it's doing for the overall industry, what do we think is possible? What's on the horizon as far as diagnostics, treatment planning, bringing that collaborative team based approach, meaning AI is on the team? What do you think is possible for radiology?
Well, yeah, wow. I'm going to put my Nostradamus hat on, like predictive. I can tell you that's the most exciting part, right? We still haven't even tapped into what's going. When we introduced deep learning, and in radiology we use the convoluted neural networks. You know, when you introduced that, it disrupted everything, and
Yeah.
so now we see augmented diagnosis, we see automatic triaging, we see your reports, enhanced reporting with natural language programming and
Yeah.
LLMs.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what I think is most exciting is actually predictive analytics.
Mm.
Because with radiomics, we're able to now AI can predict disease before your eye can even see it. And
Wow. It's
then you can take
incredible.
that and then you do risk stratification. Let's say heart disease, lung disease. It does tumor. Let's say you want to evaluate a tumor and see progression,
Wow.
or you want to even just
Predicting the progression.
predicting progression of tumors.
Wow.
So when you look at that, you combine all that data, and then let's say you add genomics, the lab and clinical findings, and wearable data, you have something just completely amazing. Now you're changing the paradigm from taking a patient and treating them reactively
Right, in
to
the
proactive
moment,
personal
right,
care.
right. Oh
That
my
it's
goodness.
crazy. And that's where the magic is, right? The magic is when AI actually now, instead of just diagnosing,
Yeah,
you're actually predicting and preventing
wow.
disease.
And that I mean, to me, that speaks to the decades of work already being done on behalf of radiologists for years and years, leaning into AI, and now this is just kind of this compounding potential for what's to
Yes.
come. And I think there's so much more opportunity for the rest of healthcare too. It's like radiologists are just paving the way. You all are
Yeah.
so smart
I
though. Let's be honest,
I'll leave you with
radiologists.
the one, the one comment I'll say is, the message is really simple.
Yeah.
AI is here to stay,
Yeah.
and we have to integrate it as a team member, but we have to stay vigilant and curious because it is constantly changing. But if we apply AI intelligently,
Right.
we're going to deliver better patient care no matter what. So
Which
that's
is
the
the
bottom
goal.
line.
That's the goal at the end of the day. Oh, well, it was
Yeah.
great to connect with you on this topic today,
Likewise.
Ron.
Thank you for
Thank you so much
yeah.
for joining.
Thank you.
And until next time. DX the podcast was born out of the idea that we are ready to diagnose the future of urgent care with the smartest leaders in the industry. Find all the other episodes on Spotify and LinkedIn to keep up with us on the journey.